I call to order the Clive City Council meeting for May 2nd. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
council members Klein,
Here.
McCoy,
Here.
Judkins,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
McElhaney,
Councilman McLean, he's about to join.
Need some water, Pete?
Yeah, mine, Pete.
You got water going
No, I'm just, dying
Matthew will get it for
dying
you.
a slow death.
While we're confirming street council presence, why don't we all rise and I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is approval of agenda. I'm not aware of any changes. Oh. Motion and a second. Further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Our agenda is approved. Next up, we have a couple of proclamations that I'm glad to give to you today. The first one is National Public Works Week, which will be May 19th through the 25th. And the proclamation reads, whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewer, traffic, streets, water resources, and engineering. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, maintenance, and construction is vitally dependent on the efforts and abilities of public works professionals. And whereas the efficiency and performance of the dedicated personnel who staff Clive's public works team is materially influenced by the attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now, therefore, I declare the week of May 19th to 25th as National Public Works Week. And congratulations and thank you to our public works folks that are here this evening.
Thank you.
Now, before I move on to the next proclamation, I did want to mention with sadness the passing of Willard Ray. He was our public works director from about 1971 for about 30 years. And I think anyone that knew Willard has stories about Willard. And, you know, the key thing about Willard, he was committed to getting the job done and making sure our customers and our residents were taken care of. And I remember Willard fondly. So I just wanted to take a moment and let everyone know about his passing. So we wish his family well and keep them in our thoughts. Next, on another note of recognition, we have Police Officer Week. And so let me read that proclamation. Whereas from the beginning of the nation, law enforcement officers have played an important role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms that are guaranteed by the Constitution and in protecting the lives and property of our citizens. And whereas it's fitting and proper that we express our gratitude for the dedicated service and courageous deeds of law enforcement officers in honor of those peace officers who've lost their lives or become disabled in performance of duty. Whereas by joint resolution approved by Congress, the president designates May 15th of each year as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week of May 15th as Police Week. Therefore, be it resolved that the City Council and City of Clive declares the week of May 12th to 18th as National Police Week in Clive in honor of all law enforcement officers whose diligence and expertise keeps our city and residents safe. Therefore, I invite everyone to observe Peace Officers Memorial Day and Police Week, along with other metro communities at the Police Officer Memorial Service held in Clive at the Eternity Church, May 13th at 5:30 p.m. So very important that we recognize the great work, and it's nice that we have 3 of our officers here tonight. So thank you. Next we have our citizens presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda. And if we have someone in the council, if they would approach the podium and identify yourself. Pete, do we have anyone online?
No, Your Honor.
Well, just as a reminder, in any of our discussions, we follow the pillars of character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And in all of our business, we follow those principles. Next time, we have a process improvement program from the police department. And Captain, I believe you were doing this.
Mayor, Council, thank you. We're presenting our process improvement on our flock safety program that we started last year. I believe it was September that we started our field testing with the system. I believe we had 20 cameras throughout the city. After October, we settled on 11 permanent locations. We've had pretty good luck with that system so far. We average about 450,000 license plate captures a month through all the cameras that we have. Through all of those captures and all of the checks that we have done, we've done close to 1,600 searches of that database system. We have had no violations of the system to date. So everybody's using it properly. They're using it for what it should be used for. Those hot list searches and searching for intelligence data on cases that the detectives and the patrol officers are working on. So as I said, we've had very good luck with it. No violations by policy so far. It's assisted us in a multitude of different cases, like say that patrol and CID have worked together. Allows us to work very closely with our partner cities that have the system as well, and we can share that information, and we talk regularly with them and work cases regularly with them as well. So that's the background of the flock system. I don't have much more than that. I'd answer any questions that you may have, but Officer Blake Crannell is here to present on the system itself, talk about some of the successes that we've had. And yeah, I'll turn it over to him. Blake's one of our patrol guys, and he's also a field training officer, so that's why he's got an extra body with him tonight. So,
Your Honor, if I could, Captain, too, I know recently you shared with me a CLIA report, part of the regular reporting that you share with the city manager's office as a part of that certification or that accreditation. And I found it very interesting. I know could be some assumptions on the flock system that it is increasing pursuits. And actually, if I recall, I think the graph that you showed me on the counts, it's actually been declining.
yeah,
I wanted to talk a little bit about that because there's an assumption that can be made that it just results in increased pursuits because of the hot list hits, but that's not necessarily the case.
yeah, we found that's not the case. I think that we even thought maybe we would see more pursuits generated out of the use of the system, and we saw that that wasn't the case. Through the pandemic in 2021, that's the highest number of pursuits that we've had recently, and that topped out at 14. This past year, we ended up with 8 pursuits total. Of all the hits that we've had through the flock system, I don't want to steal Blake's thunder. I think we've had 23 recovered stolen vehicles since the system went live, but only 3 stolen vehicles that hit through the flock system resulted in pursuits. So the number was substantially lower than I think even we thought. We evaluate all those pursuits that happen. Everyone comes across the supervisor's desk, and it goes across mine and the chief's desk, and some even come up to the city manager's office. But all of those are evaluated. I think the other thing that's surprising is the number of pursuits that are terminated by the police officers themselves, either the supervisor saying it's not necessarily a safe chase, so let's end it and be done with it. But more importantly, the officers recognizing that, the time's not right, the situation's not right, too much traffic, weather is not appropriate, whatever the case may be. So that has also led to that. I think it's kind of been a combination of both. We'll know more as we get more data through the flock system, but that was a surprise to us, the lower number that we saw. So.
Thanks, Captain.
Thanks.
Captain, I did have a quick question.
Yes.
You mentioned all of the searches were in accordance with the policy. Are you guys tracking the types or the reasons for the search, right? There must be, like a reason input in the system, right?
There is. When we do a search, we have to type in the reason for the search, and so there has to be something in there. It's generally a case number that we'll put in, which further documents, even further what it's going towards. It's not just some random reason that we put in there. There's generally a case number that's associated with it.
Criminal nexus that goes along with it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and I was just curious if there's one type of use case that is coming up more predominantly, or if you had any statistics on like the number of the types of reasons, if that makes sense, or the categories of reasons.
I don't have that data. I can find it for you. I can tell you just knowing what types of crimes we typically see in Clive. They're the majority of our property crimes. When we put in a hot list notice that we want information on, that's usually a wanted person, maybe a stolen vehicle, but typically they're property crimes that we're dealing with. Knock on wood, we're fortunate in that we don't have a lot of violent felony crimes.
Yeah, agreed. All right, well, yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
I do have several questions, but perhaps I'll wait for Blake. And if it's appropriate, you can step up for him on,
He's a good one to ask.
yeah.
Sure.
Might drill into a few detail, but
Yeah,
okay,
very good.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Officer Blake Crannell. I've been with Clive been graduated from ILEA for just over 3 years now. Currently FTOing Officer Mohammed, who got out of the academy a couple weeks ago, was it? So getting him started off on the right foot. I'm gonna do a presentation on flock safety. When I first started, we didn't have flock. So seeing the difference from before we had flock to now, it's changed my perspective on policing a little bit. I'm sure it's changed other people's perspective on policing a bit. So what is flock? Flock is an automated license plate reader, also stands for ALPR. It's a tool used to reduce crime and keep the community safe. It provides the evidence to solve, deter, and reduce crimes across the neighborhood, schools, businesses, and roadways. Really just depends on wherever you put the flock cameras. There is a strategy as to where we put our flock cameras. Oh, yeah, whole screen for you. Not very tech savvy. Good, you're good. Thank you. Appreciate you. The cameras capture objective vehicle data around the clock. This is a picture of what the cameras look like. You may have seen them across the city. If you don't know where they're at, you probably aren't going to find them. But we did just get an email from Flock the other day. They're now introducing night vision, which is going to be very nice and helpful, so that when it takes a picture of a car or a license plate at night, we'll be able to make out the model, make, model, and possibly year of the vehicle instead of just a license plate. It's going to be a great addition to what we already have. That'll help tremendously, in my opinion. One early success that we had with our flock cameras, this was last year.
I don't mean to interrupt already, but I am curious about the night vision. Does that require a new camera, or is that something that is just, it's a feature that's being enabled on our current cameras?
From my understanding, it's just a feature that they add to our current cameras. They do not need to replace the cameras. I think it's just a software update or something like that. So they keep the existing cameras. They said it won't take long. It's just a software update, and then we'll be able to have night vision with the cameras.
Thank you.
Yep. One of the early successes we had with Flock, we actually had a handgun stolen from Rangemasters here in Clive. And then the Waukee Police Department took a report of a stolen handgun from Black Flag Arsenal, which is a gun shop in Waukee off of Alice's Road. Our detectives used flock cameras to locate a suspect vehicle, which ended up being a U-Haul truck that was rented. I believe I talked to the former detective today. He said that he had put in the flock hit hot list for that U-Haul truck that was used in the theft. He had put it in at approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 5 o'clock that night, we had the suspect in custody, and he was transported to the Polk County Jail. The suspect was in the middle of getting a tattoo on 86th Street, and as you can see in the picture there, it's kind of hard to tell. There's a little circle in the bottom left. That's the stolen handgun from, I'm not sure if that's from Range Masters or the one in Waukee. I know one of them was not recovered at this, as of this time. But that stolen handgun was actually sitting with an extended magazine on it, sitting right next to where he was laying down. The subject standing up, that is the suspect who stole that firearm. There was no incident. Obviously, he was taken into custody without further incident. I don't believe there was use of force or anything like that used in this situation. He was arrested and transported to Polk County Jail.
Can you explain to me how that happened? So you put that number in, the U-Haul license plate. This guy was at the tattoo parlor with the U-Haul?
Yep. So our detectives worked with Waukee
Fix up fines?
Police Department. They ended up determining that the U-Haul truck was our suspect vehicle from both thefts.
Quick getaway vehicle.
Yeah, pretty noticeable. So then our detectives put in a hot list so that if it were to cross paths with one of our flock cameras in the city, it would alert patrol officers to where that vehicle is going or the approximate location of where that vehicle is at. And then the patrol officers ended up locating that vehicle at the tattoo parlor on 86th Street.
I got so many questions. about
Yeah,
this.
I mean, it sticks out. You'll see it.
This cat actually rented it in his name and everything and
I don't know the details of
got
that,
it. I guess.
but I think they determined that that is the case, yes.
All right.
These are some of the suspects we have arrested from flock cameras. This is just a handful of them. We have, dozens and dozens and dozens more. It is surprising to patrol officers. One thing that I definitely discovered was that before we had flock, it was just by chance that we ran into a subject with a warrant or a stolen vehicle. We run dozens of plates every single day as part of our job, or we come into contact with multiple people throughout our day. And the only way for us to determine if someone has a warrant is if we run someone's plate, run their driving status or their criminal history, or we come in contact with them, run their information for our investigations. And it was by chance that we'd run into someone with warrants. Now, with these cameras, we're able to locate more people with warrants, close more cases, and put an end to criminal activity that's taking place for some of these subjects. We've had, as Captain Rayberg said earlier, we've had several stolen vehicle flock hits. This particular case is actually my case. We had a stolen vehicle hit at 100th and Hickman eastbound. I was in the area when the flock hit came out. I ended up locating the vehicle at 73rd and Hickman. When I turned my emergency lights and sirens on, the vehicle sped off. A short pursuit took place. The vehicle ended up getting on 235 and then getting off at Valley West, and he struck a median. Did not strike any other innocent bystanders in vehicles or walking on the roadway. It was pretty late at night. The driver ran. This passenger stayed in the car. The passenger was arrested on a felony warrant out of Polk County, and the driver was arrested for eluding, theft, and reckless driving and other charges. So this is just
Real
one.
quick on this.
Yeah.
Right there. So the flock camera hit at 70 or 100th and Hickman right there.
Yep.
Does it tell you if you're going east or west then?
Yeah, so our camera at 100th and Hickman faces eastbound.
Right.
So if they hit that, we know they're going east.
The 73rd and Hickman is actually Windsor Heights.
Yes.
So you got that hit right there. You went east right there until you ran into the.
Yeah, so there was one of my partners that was working at the same time. We were talking on the phone, kind of trying to game plan like where this person could possibly go. I ended up continuing east on Hickman to see if they went east. He ended up checking the area along 86th Street and then I found the vehicle and he was able to meet up with me a short while later. But yeah, the cameras tell us the direction they're traveling, which gives us an understanding of where they may be going. Try and cut those vehicles off if we can, intersect them.
Officer Crane, if I recall, didn't you have a Windsor Heights police officer with you in the?
Yeah.
I
So,
actually was doing a ride along when this
oh
happened.
yeah, you were.
Another police officer, and I actually saw this happen live when the hit came on. I was riding, with Odessa Clark at the time, and saw the hit come up on his MDC. He was actually had somebody pulled over for a registration tag issue, and I saw it pop up and made him aware of it. And of course, these folks were already in pursuit, but it was interesting to see it in real time, how it happens and what it looks like, and the hit, how it shows up on their
And
computers. in
is
their
there
cars.
coordination with Windsor Heights PD on that too? Then how does that?
So unfortunately, they don't have flock cameras right now. That would be a question for them. I don't know if they're gonna get them or not. I think they've talked about it, but they don't have access to flock at this time. But I just advised Westcom dispatch that I was behind a stolen vehicle, and a Windsor Heights officer said over the radio that he was just down the street from me. So he attempted to prevent the suspect from fleeing, but they drove around him and a short pursuit ensued. But thankfully, there were no injuries or significant damage to any property or anything like that. This is one of our bigger flock arrests. There was a flock hit. I can't remember what it was. I think it was 88th and University westbound. Our officer located, it was for a stolen vehicle, a stolen U-Haul truck as well.
Note the thieves. right?
Yeah,
U-Haul.
yeah. The Officer Odessa Clark, this is his case. He located the stolen vehicle sitting in the parking lot at Fairway. Once he got close to the vehicle, he noticed that the vehicle was occupied. So he called for more units to get there. Once we got there, we, through a long investigation, the driver continuously lied about his name. We couldn't identify him for quite some time. We ended up determining or finding out that he had a federal warrant from the U.S. Marshal Services, nationwide warrant. So he was arrested on that warrant, theft first, possession of methamphetamine, possession of a firearm as a felon because he was a convicted felon, and interference. And he also had a large amount of cash. He had that firearm in the picture. It was loaded. He had drugs on him. So that was probably one of the more rewarding flock hits we've seen that have come through Clive. It was pretty cool to be able to see a federal warrant from the U.S. Marshal Services. So it's very rare that happens, but it does happen. And thankfully, thanks to flock, we were able to locate that subject. And he was actually, I think, escaped from, is it Fort Des Moines, I believe, whatever it is down there. So just some current flock stats, and they're continuing to go up. So far, we've had over 150 flock cases generated, and they're continuing to go up. We've had 13 Clive cases solved so far. I'm sure at this time it's more by now. We've had 23 vehicles, stolen vehicles recovered and counting. We've had more than 97 arrests just based off of flock so far. So we're able to generate cases. We're getting more arrests. We're getting more criminals off the streets and keeping the citizens of Clive safe. Oops. I believe that's all I have for the PowerPoint. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so Officer Cornell, and this may be a question for the captain, I'm not sure, but I love the positive stories. Those are great. Have we had any false positives? Any mistaken identities, anything like that?
Yeah, so
Just want to explain the process for
you to
hit what you do.
So a lot of the time when we get a flock hit, we get an alert to our computer. By policy, we have to run that license plate in our car, or I guess through dispatch if you want. It's easier just for us to run it through our car, through our NCIC. We run it through NCIC. We have to wait till we get that return. Once we get the return, we get an alert that says wanted subject. And then you have to verify, you know, it's extradition. Sometimes it's out of state warrant pickup only, which happens a lot. You know, someone maybe from Colorado, they have a Colorado only warrant, they won't come to Iowa to pick them up. At that point, if there's no other traffic violation, we're not gonna stop that vehicle. It's kind of just a waste of time. And, you know, there's really no need for us to investigate that further if they're not gonna even come pick that subject up. Sometimes warrants will be attached to vehicles. We stop that vehicle, it's not the wanted person that is driving the vehicle, we immediately have to let them go. So a lot of times we just explain, hey, so-and-so who is the registered owner of the vehicle, they have a warrant, call them, tell them to turn themselves in. Or if we can, we'll coordinate to go pick them up somewhere, if it's around here somewhere. Otherwise, we just let them go. So there are a lot of times where, well, we do stop vehicles for warrants being attached to that vehicle. That wanted subject is not in the vehicle, so we have to let them go unless we have some other sort of traffic violation, equipment violation that would give us more reason to extend the stop.
Sure. So if you had a license plate number that maybe the camera was fuzzy or just got the wrong number accidentally and you're stopping someone because of that, there's a process where you're just letting them go then at that point?
Yeah, so sometimes the camera is a little fuzzy, like it's a little blurry. Thankfully, Flock gives you a vehicle description. So if it was a black Dodge Charger, it would tell you black Dodge Charger with this license plate. If you run that license plate and you don't get a return back for a wanted subject, there's no warrant attached to that vehicle. So there are steps in place that we have to follow in order to verify that they have a warrant before we can even stop that vehicle. Or if it's a stolen vehicle, we have to, you know, run that plate, make sure it comes back as stolen before we can proceed with a traffic stop on the vehicle.
Okay. And then for others who are just driving through on and their license plates are being captured, right? Like my license plate has probably been captured hundreds of times at this
Right.
point. Can you remind me what happens to that footage?
I don't know what happens to that footage, but that might be a question. I think it's stored in a database.
I can't remember. No.
I think if we were investigating it for a crime, we could use the pattern of the routes you travel. If we were investigating a crime, but we have no reason to look it up. We can't just look you up if we don't have a reason to, if that makes sense.
It does.
I don't know what
When you say
happens
you
to the picture.
can't do that. How is that? How is that precluded? How are you stopped from doing that? Like if you just wanted to look up my license plate,
Right.
just
Right.
for
So
whatever reason.
we have to put in a reason why we're doing that search in the first place. That's the case number that would go in for the reason, or it could just be, you know, stolen vehicle case and put in a description of the case that we're looking at. And for your example, you're driving around town and your license plate is captured probably several times a day and
Right.
stored in that database. After 30 days, those images drop off the system, so they go away. If we do a search, and not that you would ever be a suspect in an incident, but if we do a search and we take those images that we need from that search and we're gonna use that as intelligence or in a criminal case, we can download that information and we can keep it for as long as we need. But otherwise, just you driving through town, it captures your image of your plate. Yeah, that goes away after 30 days.
Thank you.
So
That was one of my questions. I mean, 450,000 hits so far. What happens to the captures? I do recall it being removed from the system after 30 days. I can't recall, is that system then scrubbed? You know, what's Flock do with that data? I
to
can't,
my knowledge, they don't do anything with it. It goes away completely and it's not kept anywhere. It's not searchable to us. Well, after 30 days, we don't have access to it
The
unless
data's
we were
on
to
their
download it
servers though,
initially.
right?
I'm sorry.
The data's on their servers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't say I recall this with perfect clarity, but I do remember reviewing that contract, and one of the changes was making sure that the data is
Believe it.
no longer in their system as well.
Okay.
Yep.
I-
I think I remember that.
Yeah, but we'd have to double check the contract to be sure about that.
Yeah. Yeah, Councilmember Nicolini, that's my recollection as well, that it deletes after 30 days. And part of it is just the data storage to maintain that is
Sure.
huge.
Sure.
And what's, unless, as Captain Rayberg talked about, if there is one within that 30-day window that there's an investigation and they want to capture and pull down, that, like, for example, if it's a suspect and wanting to see what their routes are, they can pull that data down. But unless they do that, it's going to wipe clean after 30 days.
Right. And then to your question of misreads of plates or mistakes that might be made. So a good example of that is our blackout plates in Iowa. For some reason, those show up as Texas license plates a lot of times, which goes back to our process of verifying that we've got the right plate, the right vehicle. We've gone to the extreme of driving up next to vehicles before and looking and making sure, pulling a driver's license photo and saying that's our guy or that's not our guy. So we do have the checks in place. There's various things that we do, but
And Captain, you mentioned that the policy's working. So I'm
Yes.
glad to hear that. Do we have certain checkpoints in place whereby every 6 months or after a year, we're going to review the policy to make sure that it's as thorough and accurate as we want it to be, or if maybe there needs to be tweaks done? I don't know. Do we have any kind of increments in there where we're checking that?
yeah, the policy itself, it gets reviewed periodically as technology changes. There can be changes to the policy. Now the chief does a biannual review of all the downloads, all the searches that are done. And so that's where that number of I want to say it's 1,570 searches that have been done in the last 6 months. But he has reviewed the listing of those searches and found them all to be within policy.
So he also then at that 6-month period sends a report to me. And that's part of the policy in terms of the usage and the counts. And another situation where I was doing a ride along kind of to the point of why it's important that they do the verification is I was riding with Officer Nielsen, and it was during the day, it was on a weekend, and it was like a Sunday, I think, and there was a flock hit. And when he went to verify the license plate and we were coming up on it, I think the vehicle was coming westbound on University. We were going eastbound and about ready to meet it. And the particular court order was only during court hours do we want you to pick this person up, because they didn't want it on the weekends, which I thought was they probably see it all the time. That was very fascinating to me. So Officer Nielsen didn't pull him over. But because he did the verification NCIC, he saw those details, which you're not going to see that on the flock camera hit. That's why it's very important to do that additional verification.
We actually get probably anywhere from 5 to 10 of those specific type of flock hits every single day. And a lot of it is arrested during court hours only. So
Why is that?
Usually they're for debtors exams, so people aren't paying their bills. And, yeah.
Pays to not pay
It's
your
just one of
bill?
those things.
So we don't even begin to stop those cars at that time if it's outside of daytime hours.
We saw the car go by.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
How it has in-
Shrikant, do you have any more questions?
No, I think I would be curious to see the statistics on the most common reasons. If there is something, there may not be, but if there's kind of a statistical trend line that these are the types of searches that are or the reasons for the searches that are more predominant, that'd be useful to know. But other than that, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Yep, I can get that for you. And if anybody wants to come do a ride along, see how it works, let us know. We're more than happy to have you come.
I was about to say the
A
same
few
thing.
hours.
To do a ride along and actually see it in action is it's fascinating to see it and how the officers use it as a tool and all the steps that they go through. That the one that Officer Crannell talked about where he was in the lead pursuit. Officer Clark was going to continue on the pursuit, then he remembered I was in the car. So that stopped pretty quickly, but it was interesting to see that whole
Yeah, but so if
process.
we do a ride along, we don't get to go on the pursuit.
You do not.
We dump you off at the nearest corner.
Here's bar.
That's, or we could probably find someplace, but yeah.
Or they disengage like,
And
Officer
only
Clark.
ride between Monday and Friday from 9 to 3 and not over lunch. Because the court's closed down at lunch.
Yeah,
You can only
I
have-
will say, if
or just pay your bills. We don't have to worry about the dinner.
If I want to see the flock system work, I can't be on weekends because you can't arrest half the people.
I would say during the day and the evening hours is the most common times we see flock hits. Overnight hours, we hardly see any flock hits just because there's so very many few traffic and
U-Hauls aren't out at night.
if we do get flock hits at night, it's usually stolen vehicles, so.
Mhm.
We've actually had 3 stolen U-Hauls, if you can believe it. So,
Well, congratulations. We appreciate all the process
All right.
improvements.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Matt.
Yeah, there's one too.
Just PDF.
Yeah, you can just roll through it.
Great. That's a tough act to follow. That's not really fair. So, Chris Shires, principal with Confluence consultant firm hired by the MPO. And so I'm here tonight to do I'll try to make it as brief as possible, but please do interrupt me with questions. An update to you, Mayor and Council, as far as what we've been up to. And so you may be aware that there we go. The Des Moines MPO was a lucky recipient of a Safe Streets for All, I'll try not to use the acronyms, grant to conduct a comprehensive safety action plan for our metro. We're one of several locations highlighted in blue that had received that. And just as a quick reminder, especially for anybody in the audience or watching online, our Des Moines metropolitan organization does serve the city of Clive as well as all of our neighbors around here and our counties of Polk and Warren and a little bit in Dallas as well. So what they are the coordinating agency for this safety study, the safety plan. And they really are the ones that are helping get that input and make sure that all those member communities such as yourselves are informed through the process. And so, like I said, I am a part of the consultant team hired by the MPO. There's several other firms involved. It's a pretty large project, and so there's quite a few of us on this team. One of my major roles is this type of community outreach, public input. And so as something ever comes up, especially those of you that have my contact information, feel free to reach out to me or contact us through your staff or through the MPO. And so what is the purpose of this comprehensive safety action plan? It's all about reducing and eliminating severe injuries as well as fatalities. And so a very noble idea. That is the whole point behind this. And that's where this grant dollars is focused from, that Safe Streets for All programming. Through our the jobs funding legislation, federal legislation implemented several years ago, all about can we either get to zero or severely or greatly reduce those fatalities and severe injuries. And so what we'll be doing through this process is identifying, we're in the middle of that right now, identifying those major crash factors and risks. What are our high injury networks and corridors? So what are our streets and roadways that we're seeing the most injuries and severe crashes? And then we want to develop a focused plan on how to improve and address those issues over time. And we want these to be community driven as well. So fact-based, community driven on what's important. So ultimately that we can have this plan that we can use towards receiving additional funding. Our ask at the end of this process will be that each member community does pass a resolution accepting this plan so that we all as a metro can go after funding for identified projects. So a little bit more on Safe Streets for All. We do have key principles. And if you look at these key principles listed on the slide, we're making some statements here, some value statements. Death and serious injury is unacceptable. We as humans make mistakes. We are physically vulnerable to crashes, and our responsibility is shared. And safety is something to be proactive, and then that redundancy is the critical part. And you see that wheel of kind of all the different kind of high-level approaches that we want the roads to be used safer, we want the vehicles to be safer, we want our post-crash management to be better, we want safe speeds, just that safe attitude as well. And so with this comprehensive safety action plan, there are 8 key requirements in it to make sure that we are successful in this plan. We need to have that leadership commitment and a part of the goal setting. There's a planning structure. There's that safety analysis I talked about. We do want to make sure we're engaging our community. Equity is a consideration for our application as well as engagement. The policy and the process changes, some of the strategy and how we select different key projects. And through this, we want to make sure we're showing progress and we're being transparent. And so again, with that target goal of eliminating, really there's a couple options for target goals. Eliminate, go to 0 for those traffic deaths and severe injuries, or at least greatly or significantly reduce those injuries, those serious injuries and deaths. And then a target year. When do we want to accomplish this goal? And this is something we need to ask all of our community members. Are we going to run at a 2035 goal? Or is it a 2040 or a 2045 goal? And so why do we need the Safer Streets for All? Well, I want to show a little bit of the data, some of this recent data of where we're trending, both as a country and locally. So we have about 1.3 million lives lost globally every year from traffic crashes. And in the US alone, over 42,000. So it's very significant. We think individually, if you had a traffic death in your family or severe injury, how that would impact you on a personal basis. And then kind of a real chilling statistic, and I have another slide on this, is 19% increase in pedestrians struck and killed just from 2019 to 2022. So we're going backwards in safety. Things are getting worse. And this chart here definitely shows that since if I can read my own slide, 1980 to 2022, we started progressing and getting safer, cutting those pedestrian fatalities nearly in half in 2010. But here we are in 2022, and we're right back up there in the 8,000 range.
You know what the difference is between that 80 and the 2022 and vehicles on the road or driven or trips?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do not know that number, but obviously the vehicles have increased and pedestrians on the road have increased. But I don't think that it's doubled since 2010. And so we're definitely seeing an issue with more crashes or more pedestrian fatalities, at least in relationship to, we haven't doubled the number of vehicles on the road nationally. Okay, and so a few more things then locally. When we look at a 5-year trend, just in our Des Moines region, our Des Moines metro, we do see a real issue, a real problem. So we had over 1,800 fatalities and serious injury crashes in the last 10 years. That's a big number if we add that all together. 151 people in Des Moines were involved in a fatal or serious injury crash in just 2022. And so when we kind of break that together in that same 5-year time period, over 50,000 total crashes, 939 of those were either had a fatality or serious injury. We had 168 fatal of those 993. And then when we kind of break it down by user type, group, a couple of things that really stand out is that 119 pedestrians, 29 bicyclists, and 215 motorcyclists. And sometimes we refer to those as also vulnerable users. They're not in a metal box to protect them. A motorcycle isn't, a biker is not, a pedestrian is not. Some of the other statistics we look at is the impact on our rural areas. They have a higher percentage of serious crashes, and most of those being that top reason being off-road, leaving the roadway. Those and FSIs, fatal and serious injury crashes, are definitely more frequent on the weekends and in dark conditions. And again, that 1/3 of the rural crashes are occurring in dark and unlit conditions. And so sometimes we look at if there's a significant issue on a roadway or intersection, is that something that lighting can assist with? Now, the other interesting fact here is single vehicles, only just one vehicle involved crashes were 46% of those fatal and serious injury crashes. And then again, the crashes involving motorcyclists and pedestrians definitely had a higher likelihood leading to a fatal or serious injury. Again, those being vulnerable road users. And so half of the vulnerable road users crashes have occurred at intersections. And then 65% is when they're either entering or crossing a roadway. And then speeding or failing to yield were top causes in our urban areas for fatal and serious injuries. Males were involved in 67% of the time, and younger drivers were involved in 21% of the time. So things just to kind of keep in mind on why this is really critical and very important to us. And so,
Chris,
yeah,
quick
please.
question. I know we were kind of just talking about this over here and I'm guessing this is probably hard for the traffic incident reports. But how much have phones played into accidents? I you guys were talking about it and I was thinking about it earlier today. I had somebody who was behind me on FaceTime on their phone behind me in a car. And I wonder, and I don't know, and maybe even Captain Rayberg has a thought on that. I don't know how, when you have a crash or an incident, how an officer is investigating it can tell it was related to a phone, or if it's pretty obvious, and is that becoming a part of the reporting for crashes? Because boy, I got to think that's becoming a big driver behind, particularly those single vehicle crashes. I don't know.
Right.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Captain, but
Yeah, if you
No,
wanted to
that's
talk about the
okay.
reporting
how that
mechanism.
plays into.
From a percentage, I guess off the top of my head, I don't know. I would say it's probably more than we know.
How do you
I
know?
can ask somebody if they were using their phone at the time of a crash and they can say no. And I'm kind of stuck. I can get a search warrant for every car crash that happens to see if they were using their phone, but that's not really feasible either. So
Right. So it's
it
hard.
probably happens way more than we would think.
Right.
So.
So it's hard. That's not going to show up in these statistics. Yeah.
And just even on the reporting side, so not just like your chief alluded to, not every report is going to be able to say whether or not a cell phone use was involved. And so it's a little bit of an unknown. And I did make a note that if we have any specific data that we can share on this, that we will. But I know just personally, I think it's got to be maybe one of the biggest reasons why we're seeing an increase.
Yeah.
Chris, real quick, on some of
Mhm.
those single crashes, that's a pretty large number. I think it was 46%. Have they any idea if sudden cardiac arrest, because of the large prevalence of that with those single crashes, contributed to that at all?
I don't know that answer, but that's another, you guys have some great questions. I don't know that one, but I'll see if there's any data set on that. I think that'd be a great one to share. I'm just gonna write a note on that. And maybe it's just even any type of medical incident.
Sure.
One of the data points does suggest, especially in the rural areas, is still that single vehicle leaving the roadway for whatever reason. Whether they've had a medical issue or on their phone or avoiding a deer.
There might be, and I don't know if they're on the
Or
phone piece too, if I know certain states have implemented bans in use of phones, and I know there's been some discussion of
Right.
that in Iowa, but a bill hasn't passed for that. But comparing, it's kind of hard to compare state to state just because roadway systems are so different between states. But if there is even any data trends to show the states that have done that. But again, I know those are also hard to enforce.
Right.
Unless you're seeing it.
And one big picture, and I like your thinking on this, is one big picture approach to this, though. It's not just one thing. It's not just physical improvements to roadways. It can be certain types of enforcement of rules, education, driver training, pedestrian training to one, get us to put down our phones or make other types of improvements, kind of like we did with drunk driving, really pushing that as a program. And so that would be one of those of the toolbox of tools that could be considered. Obviously, that one's harder for, say, the city of Clive to impact because we do need that change at the state level. Anything else before I go on here?
You had mentioned in an earlier slide that something about 2035, 2040, 2045. What were those dates?
Yeah, and maybe I went over this a little too fast. One of the things that we need to do to establish when we're creating this comprehensive safety action plan is really what is our goal? Is our goal 0 fatalities and serious injuries or a significant reduction of the same? And then what's our target year by which we're going to try to measure our success? Is it as soon as 2035 or 2040 or 2045? And so those are two things that we collectively as an organization need to come up with.
So the federal government is saying you have to have a program or a this study done and a plan to get federal funding. Is that why we're doing it?
To be able to access the federal funding to pay for these improvements, we have to have this plan.
To pay for these improvements.
And this plan
But then
has to
you get to
meet.
choose what year. So, I mean,
Yes.
between two, okay, 2,300. I mean, that's ridiculous, right?
So there isn't a point system or a scaling system. So those with more aggressive, still has to be realistic, more aggressive plans may score higher and be in first line for funding. So that is something else we need to think about.
Regardless if your number is 0 or significantly reduced, because if it's a point, why wouldn't you choose significantly reduced? Because at 0, you're going to fail, right? It's not realistic.
It's-
0 is not a realistic number.
And this is one that we've definitely debated on other projects. So I
It
really
feels good to
appreciate
put
your.
it in there.
Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective on this, but on the challenge side, some communities have really taken this on as a challenge. Let's get to 0 and really want to push that. What can we do to get to 0 fatalities and serious injuries? And I realize
An MPO.
that's a scary goal.
This is an MPO.
Yeah, MPO driven or managed project based on this fund dollars. But the more, it still needs to be realistic, but the more aggressive our plan is, the better in line we are for funding. Still needs to be aggressive. And so we need to be realistic on what we think can happen. Yeah. Okay. Let me keep running along here. I want to make sure I don't skip. So let's talk a little bit about, why we're here. One thing that I would welcome, if you have any feedback or comments for me on even tonight, as whereas, you've heard from you either know yourself or heard from constituents on where there may be specific issues on your roadways, safety concerns, or other issues related to people using our roadways. We have met with your city staff. They did provide us some feedback. We are doing our own analysis. And the other thing I wanted to leave the group with is we do have a project website where community members are invited to provide their feedback and input. And so if, especially anybody watching online, they're able to go to the Des Moines MPO's website. There is a link to the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan program, which then will link them to this online engagement website where they can provide very specific feedback. It is map-based, and I'd be happy to leave some flyers that also have a quick QR code link to this as well. And so I don't know if we want to, everybody's taking.
Thank you.
Or we can for the clerk.
Yep.
So, and I'm happy to follow up also if anybody has any specific comments they want to share with me. The more impact, input and feedback we get, the better. So what is next physically from our team is we're completing our equity analysis, kind of those equity and social impact safety outcomes, mapping that high injury network. Where does the data say the greatest crashes and serious injuries are occurring? And then, of course, continuing on our community engagement, making sure we're reaching out to each member community as well as their residents and the community members to get their input on where do they have their safety concerns and even some of their ideas so we can continue crafting this program. And this is a many-month process, and so you'll be hearing more from us through the summer months and into fall. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or even hear any of your stories or feedback you might want to provide me.
Any questions for Clive? Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. And I was excited to hear about the flock program. I did not know all the details, so I'm glad I was here tonight.
Very good. Thank you. Next item, we have consent.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion second, approve consent. Further discussion? Seeing none, with the council, please vote. And with clerk, please post that vote. And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next up is our action item with our GEO bond. Liz.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As you know, the AA1 rating was affirmed by Moody's after our rating call this last month. I'll ask Suzanne from PFM, and maybe, I don't know if Jennifer's coming up, but while she's approaching the podium, just want to thank you and Jennifer, and of course, Dorsey and Whitney and staff that helped get us here so far with this bond rating and some exciting news. So I'll let you take the.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so.
They do have all of the materials, Suze.
Yeah, oh, they do have, okay.
Yeah.
So bond sale day today. We were in a Fed meeting week. There was no move, no change in the short-term interest rate with the Fed. I think the market has figured out it's not going to happen anytime soon for a rate cut. But with that, we went out, did 10-year level debt service for the bonds within the $1.48 debt service levy. These were non-bank qualified this year because we are going to be coming back with a fall issue paid by TIF, and then the WRA allocation put the city over 10 million for the year. And so we are doing these non-BQ. We received 5 bids today from over 38 different banks, and those bids range from 3.31% to 3.39%. So again, that really tight 8 basis point spread is really tight from first to fifth place. The winning bid today came from Fifth Third Securities from Cincinnati, Ohio at 3.31%, with the cover bid, the second place bidder from TD Securities from New York, at 3.33. So just 2 basis points between the first place and the second place. We did also look at the pricing. As a AA1 today, you price 31 basis points over the AAA BVAL scale. And we looked for some comps today just to understand compared to the AAA, it was 7 basis points off the AAA. And so 7 basis points based on the bond sale today equals to roughly 19,000, well, not roughly, exactly $19,926 over the 10-year period. So that 7 basis points, obviously the cash basis and all that stuff we've had the conversation about, definitely solid A1, AA1 rating, and excellent pricing today. So any questions for me on the bond
Questions
sale?
for Suzanne.
Question, Suzanne, great results. So I very much appreciate that. You know, for many years, Clive had a AAA bond rating with a AA right now. I understand the difference of the criteria, how that's changed. AA is still an excellent rating right there. Is there any way, and I know we've talked about this, Reg, to get back to that AAA bond rating?
There's one way, and it's to go to accrual accounting. There's okay, that's one strategy. Strategy number 2, something we've talked about, moving from Moody's to S&P. S&P does not have the same 2-notch downgrade for a cash basis accounting system. We have discussed, I don't know if you want me to get into it, but we have talked about, there's a way to get a private rating from S&P without being public rating when we come back to do the issue this fall. And if they do give us the AAA, then we can go forward with that just for the regular rating fee. It counts towards the regular rating fee to see if we can get a AAA from S&P. Moody's has flat out said that basically there's no way. You are a AAA city based on their scorecard. They notch you down to for the cash basis accounting. And that's just something that was in the last criteria change. And so that's what we talked about. S&P, I mean, all of the things in the S&P criteria, I really think it's worth trying. And then what that would mean, just to talk it out, you would have the Moody's rating on all the outstanding bonds, but then moving to the pricing and the future bonds, you could go to the AAA, and then we would still be responsible for providing information annually to Moody's. But the new money bonds would then be based on whatever the rating, if we could get the AAA with S&P.
Some communities have, because of this scenario between S&P and Moody's, will go back and forth each year. So they'll do S&P one year, Moody's the other year, and just kind of play the ratings, if you will, against each other and kind of make a decision. We've been with Moody's ever since I've been here. I think it's makes good sense for our fall issue to try it. Basically what the expense is a little, it's the additional expense of having another rating agency rate your bonds.
Which is roughly how much, because the delta is 19 grand.
About 10.
I was gonna say, I think that it's like, I think I think it's 70% or something like that of the rating fee. But if they would give the AAA, then we would just roll that into, you get credit for their full rating fee, which is like, it was like less than $20,000 for the rating fee. But the private rating to see if we get the AAA, if we didn't and decided to go back to Moody's, like if they say you're AA plus, then we would make the decision, that would be a sunk cost, or anyway, so that's the risk, is that if they come back with a AA plus and don't have the AAA, it's like, it'd be like maybe $10,000-ish.
But you're talking of a $19,000 delta already and a $20,000 cost to try to play the
Right.
game. You're chasing nickels to get to a dollar. I mean,
Right.
right? Like,
That's the hard part is it's 19,000 over 10 years. The cost for us to go to accrual accounting is probably that in 1 year.
but just getting the S&P is
Right.
that,
Yeah.
just to get it in.
Well,
one month.
So
but
that's why we've
remember, but
been-
you wouldn't be, so you would be paying a rating fee regardless
Right.
for the next bond issue. So so the only sunk cost would be if you don't get the AAA and go back to Moody's
Well,
and
every
abandon
time
it.
you get every time you go
Yeah.
for a bond, these thieves charge you.
Yes,
another $20.
Moody's is tremendous. There's a Moody's rating fee
Lord.
every single
Yes,
time we get, every time we seek a new issue rating, we're paying
Every time.
every time. So there's no extra cost unless we would pay S&P for this private rating and it doesn't work out the way we want. When we decide not to have two ratings that are AA1 or a AA plus, that's the only thing that would be a sunk cost, which is
Two,
probably
yeah.
10 to 12,000.
Yeah,
I'm estimating.
You
I'd
got
have
a
to-
rating fee regardless. It's
You have
just
a rating fee
whether you do a
regardless.
secondary one is the extra cost.
But you might
Yeah,
have to, if you roll the dice and S&P says no,
Right.
and then you have to go to Moody anyways.
correct.
But
But
why
if
wouldn't you just
S&P
go to
says-
S&P at AA and just take that,
If S&P says AA1,
just take it
that's not any different of going
Right.
back to Moody's.
and
Well, and
just pay that fee and be done
But-
with Moody's?
yes, so but then you have
Anyways.
two ratings outstanding. The only reason is, so anyway, there's a strategy. Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time we've done that. And I will say, we tested this specifically in West Des Moines because they're AAA Moody's and AAA S&P. And the question was, is there a pricing difference in the market? Because the market will tell you they prefer Moody's, but S&P prices no differently. And that's where we tested it, because West Des Moines used to pay for two ratings. And we said, wait a minute, what if we pay for one rating and alternate back and forth every year? Because you're not getting, there's no pricing benefit for two ratings on one transaction. Anyway, so, and we tested it because we didn't know, okay, first of all, one rating versus two, and then do they price differently back and forth? No, the market prices whatever rating is on the cover,
Well,
and
I
there's
was
no
gonna
difference.
say, I would think the financial markets would be sophisticated enough to know the
Yes.
difference between how Moody's rates and how
Mhm.
S&P does.
Mhm,
I don't think it'd be that much different.
yeah.
Done.
So,
Yep, it's just about the notching factors, and Moody's has these downgrade notching factors
Mhm.
for cash basis versus accrual. And part of that is I think their argument to that is on an accrual basis accounting, you get to see more of the asset picture of the community. But there's costs to doing accrual base. There's some communities that are cash basis and then pay, whether it's another accounting firm or some even work with their auditor to
Mhm.
create another set of
modified-
financial books
modified
that are
accrual, yeah.
accrual based, and then you have to pay that expense to do that.
Two sets of books is always been
Correct.
frowned upon.
One cash basis, one accrual. They're not
Yes.
different. They're just
it's called modified accrual.
modified
thinking
accrual
about
is
it.
modified accrual is what
I'm
it's
not in on
called.
that.
Yeah.
And so but again, you have an expense and a fee to do that. And again, when you're looking at, and that's why we have Suzanne always tell us, like, what's the AAA rating?
Mhm.
You know, the $19,000 difference over 10 years is pretty nominal.
Yeah.
Again, I would love to have the AAA back too. It's just going to be hard for us to do that. And I think also one warning sign I think we have too in the future is the institutional framework of the state of Iowa. That also is going to impact us. I know I've talked about that before with the new property tax legislation. We had to, for the first time in this rating call, talk about how that constrains our future revenue flexibility and show that way differently than we've ever showed that before. That did not notch us this year. But it didn't also help us either. I mean, our liquidity.
Yeah, for sure. The new
different.
constraints definitely removed a portion of the financial flexibility, but Clive is a strong enough credit and has, and still retains financial flexibility even in the new structure. It's just less flexibility than before. But I had a very frank discussion, to your point, with, okay, talk to me frankly, and she said, you are a AAA city, you get notched for the cash basis, so.
Well, and so it's 19,000 that we're paying extra over 10 years,
Mhm.
this time, but this isn't the only bond we're gonna issue.
Right.
Correct. And the CIP has significant projects in it coming forward with some of
Right.
the reconstruction. So
Yeah.
that's where it might end.
There definitely could be some future savings
Yes.
potentially. And also this is a year or two where we're not bank qualified. That's
Mhm.
not always a necessary. I think the last time we were bank qualified, we were almost right at AAA
Mhm.
rating. So then it made very little difference. But this year we're not bank qualified just due to the amount of bond issues and the
Yeah.
overlapping debt that we have like through the WRA that pushes us over the 10 million total.
And I will say that if there was a year to be non-BQ, this is a good year to be BQ because some of the bank regs that changed last year, there are fewer banks actively participating in BQ right now. So it's actually a good time to be in non-BQ. I personally believe non-BQ is actually pricing better than BQ right now.
Yeah. So not necessarily
So,
an advantage anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any further questions? Otherwise, we're looking for a resolution here.
All right.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Seeing none, with the council, please vote. And would clerk please post that vote?
Thank you.
And the resolution passes by a vote of 5-0. Utility rates.
So this will be our final consideration of the utility rate ordinances that are incorporated in the FY 25 budget. I'll reiterate, we incorporated 3% for an increase for the water utility, 2% for sewer, and 8% for stormwater. Again, the ERU adjusted as well from 3,200 square feet to 4,100. Therefore, we, as you know, will be communicating with commercial ratepayers that the bill will see a change. Also for consideration this evening is a resolution on the solid waste, increasing the rate 3% as well from $15.67 to $16.12 per residential customer. And of course, those rates are determined through Metro Waste Authority. So if you have any, we have had no comments from the public on either verbal or in written. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to
Any
answer those.
questions for Liz? Otherwise, we'd like to move into the third reading.
I move that ordinance number 1142 pertaining to water rates be considered for the third time, placed upon its passage and adopted.
Second.
Motion is second for the third reading on 1142. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? By a vote of 5-0, ordinance number 1142 is declared to have been enacted.
Move that ordinance number 1143 pertaining to sewer rates be considered for the third time, placed upon its passage and adopted.
Second.
Motion is second for the third reading on 1143. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? By a vote of 5-0, ordinance number 1143 is declared to have been enacted.
Move that ordinance number 1144 pertaining to stormwater rates be considered for the third time, placed upon its passage and adopted.
Second.
Motion is second from the third reading of ordinance 1144. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? By a vote of 5-0, ordinance number 1144 is declared to be enacted.
Move the resolution approving revised solid waste rates.
Second.
Motion is second on the resolution on solid waste rates. Further discussion?
We abstaining, Your Honor.
Very good. Seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 4 affirmative and 1 abstention. Next, we have thank you, Liz.
Yes, I'm one more thing.
Oh, one
One
more
more.
Okay.
So we have our process improvement for administrative services this evening. Corey Eastman will be doing the presentation, and as he approaches the podium, I just want to thank him and the utility billing division as well as water distribution. Well, those guys left, but Jeff will make sure to thank them for us. They've worked really hard on putting together a lot of work on the high consumption issues and reviewing those, and had several meetings over the last several months. So I will have Corey is happy to present to you this evening.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Our process improvement started on a whim from one of our new utility billing specialists that had 12 years' experience at another city doing the same job. She questioned why we stand for 3 hours printing off utility bills on a black and white copier in a room, put them in a box, and have them shuttled over to another company to stuff and mail. So to just on a whim to entertain, we invited the company that she worked with in, and immediately their representative for us sold us on many things. Currently, we use one vendor to print the shell. We utilize the copier to print on it. We then send it over to another local business to fold them and parse them out, tie in the newsletter, and they put all that together. And then we then have to coordinate with the United States Postal Service to make sure there's enough funds for those to go out. So not only would we with this process improvement reduce us from 3 vendors down to 1, but we're also going to save some staff time. We're going to reduce the need for a black and white copier, which right now we are the primary user of that copier. During the upcoming renovation of the building, that space can be used. We no longer have to pay for the upkeep for the copier, and then we also get the additional square footage. Our proposal would be this process to take effect when the new rates that you just approved go into effect. We would then switch over to the new company that would take care of all of this commingling for us. And then there, of course, is cost savings to go along with this. So for the utility bill, we have our monthly bill, and then for those who don't pay by a certain time, we get to send out a reminder notice. And currently, we print those off a small printer, rip them into thirds, stuff them, post them, and get them out the door. On the utility bill itself, we currently print and send out 4,400 utility bills. Right now, it's costing us about 85 cents per bill to get out. The proposed price would drop it down to 81 cents, which a monthly savings of $167 and change. The reminder notices, unfortunately, we do have to send those. Right now, we're averaging about 400. It's costing us about $1 to get those out. The proposed rate for them to take this over for us would be 83 cents a piece. So we're looking at $68 savings per month for the billing side, a savings of $235 a month. Now the monthly newsletter.
How about staff time in there as well? What are you looking at for savings on that?
Staff time was 3 hours a month, so we're looking at right about $100 for staff time. But the bonus side of the 3 hours is some of the things that we've always pushed to the back burner. We can now start taking those on. And some of that will come up in the next conversation, but every hour that we can take to put towards our bandwidth is worth it. Any other questions on the billing side? Okay. The monthly newsletter, Pete, if you'd like to jump in at any time. Currently, we're paying for a color shell. Then we send over back and forth to print in black and white. Right now, we print about 4,650 at a price of about 30 cents a piece. The rep came in and she was like, I think I can beat that too. And so we're like, talk. And she came in, and to do exactly what we're doing was 14 cents a piece. And we're like, we really want color. And so she went back out to some of their local vendors, see if she could get a comparable price in full color. And she did, and she actually beat it. She can get it in at 26 cents. So this one's more of a want than a need, but to send out our current newsletter in full color to our residents is a little bonus. And right there, we're going to save an additional $172 a month. For the full year, we're looking at a savings of just under $8,000.
Want versus need is relative depending on who you're talking to.
I was not making eye contact.
Right, Mayor? Mayor Edwards has been asking for this for a while.
Trying to build on your question about staff time. The reason the newsletter, we can make this pivot is because we now have Molly on staff who's got the editing and the design skills to be able to do all the formatting in-house. So part of the cost with our current vendor was for them to do that design work. We'll still have those costs. It'll just be the type of cost now that is in Molly's time and all the other effort we have to put into to build the newsletter in-house and then just submit it as a file for printing.
Sorry, who is the vendor that will do all this then, Corey?
It's Mail Services. They're right up in Urbandale. If you know where Grand Slam USA is, they're right across the street.
Who are the three vendors that we're currently working with?
Right now, we're with Professional Forms, who actually prints the utility bill for us and our reminder notices. Business Letter will actually does our sorting, folding, and commingling to the United States Postal Service.
So Business Letter is a local Clive-based business
Currently, yes.
and Mail Services is Urbandale-based business?
Yes.
Okay, so we're taking business away for Clive-based business?
As currently, yes.
They are also going to be
Are they
relocating
relocating?
likely out of Clive.
And I understand it's in the floodplain. I just want to make sure we're clear where we're reinvesting our dollars. So don't get me
Correct.
wrong, I'm all in favor of efficiency.
Yeah.
I'm with you on this.
It was a concern of ours as well. That's why we were I was hesitant at first.
Mhm.
But when their rep, was sitting down with us, for the first initial visit, she goes, even if you don't go with us, here's some things you can do to save money. And right then that told me she cares more about us than what we're looking to do. So when we brought her back in, she picked up where she left off and she has really showed us where we could make efficiencies even if we don't make that move. But to make this move, it's a one-stop shop. Once we calculate the bills, we upload through a secure link and it's a go time. And they have it out all in the same day.
We continue to work with the Business Letter on other print needs, all the water service line postcards that have been going out, thousands of them over the last 3 months. Those were all printed by the Business Letter.
Thank you.
And we'll still use them for the in-house stuff, envelope needs and business cards and such. This is just one piece. So with that one, I think this is where the resolution our next step for us for the process improvement is to pose a resolution to council for approval to go ahead and sign the master services agreement with Mail Services to take over our mailing of our utility bill, reminder notices, and our monthly newsletter.
Any further questions for Corey? Otherwise, we're looking for a resolution.
Move a resolution.
Second.
Motion is second on the resolution. Further discussion? Seeing none, with council, please vote. And would the clerk please post that vote?
I had to refresh.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0. High consumption reporting.
Well, I thank you for the passage of the resolution. You'll make two ladies downstairs very happy. Now moving on
And the
to.
mayor.
And Mayor, we won't discredit that. Now the high consumption reporting. I wish I would have done this first because then we could end it on a really positive note, but when I first started here, there was a system where our residents could sign up for, and then anytime they could set a threshold, and anytime that they went over that threshold, they would get an email alert saying that you've gone over your water usage. It was a service that everybody felt good about. Now, as we move forward and we look back, there wasn't so good, but we'll go through this. One thing that ended that program is when we updated our meter reading service from Aclara Star to the Clara One. Basically, all the scripting that we paid a third party to do for us to make the previous system work. Once we made that change to a different platform, all that went away. And it was kind of like one of those things you didn't receive any phone calls, so everything must still be working. Come to find out, in the last year, we had a resident have a faulty toilet, and it was in a rental, and it went on. The tenant didn't bring it to any concern, but the landlord did, and it was a considerably high bill. It brought up the conversation, why weren't they notified? Well, that brought in the deeper discussion of, well, is the system still working? Well, no, it's not. So then we were asked to dive deeper into it and find out why and what, and if it can't work, then what's some possible solutions to replace it? So at that time, the task force, which is made up from Jeff, Public Works Director, members of his staff, Liz, myself, the utility billing staff, and Pete, and some members of his staff all get into a room and we all started discussing this. So we started identifying some possible solutions. And one of them was, well, let's go back to that third party and see if we can rebuild this. Unfortunately, he works for the Des Moines Water Works, who also moved to a Clara One, and they have a team of IT people that have tried to rebuild the API system, and they've got it up and going, but he was very clear that it's not reliable. They are constantly working with it, and they have a team of 8 members. We don't have that dedicated staff to keep something like that going, especially when he's already telling us it's going to fail more than it's going to be successful. So another option was, how about we encourage customers to install a tracker themselves post meter? That comes with a cost. So then, do we really want to put a burden cost onto our customers just for something to help monitor their water usage? So that one was kind of like, okay, we'll leave that there. Let's move on. Then let's work with.
Corey, on that one, we weren't putting a burden onto the customer. The customer would then choose to put it on, right?
Correct, but we were offering the first service for free. So we looked at it as a
I
burden
get
that way.
that, but we'll come back to this, but turn the page and say, we didn't want to put the burden on the customer, so that goes to the side. There's more discussion. Obviously,
Yeah,
I'm loaded for the night, but that I don't think that should have been just dismissed and we didn't put a burden on them. Let them choose if they want the burden or not.
Correct. We were also looking at, with Pete's assistance, could there be a possible grant out there that we could do a cost share? If someone chose to go out and buy the $80 to $500 mechanism to have a plumber put on, and could we do some cost sharing? The other side of this is, we actually had a customer call in because they had installed an app on their phone and that they had irrigated for 5 minutes. There's no way they could have used those gallons. And I go, do you know how many gallons are going through your line? Nope. I go, neither does your app. She was off considerably on her usage from her app to what actually went through the lines. This is another reason why this one was kind of pushed to the side. Because if you, the customer, see something and say, well, this is what this says, but our software says this is what you actually used,
But
we don't want that
again,
discrepancy.
Again, we're gonna split hairs here. Again, it's the customer choosing to use the app. That's not on us, right? But for us to choose not to give options to the customers is not the direction I want to go in the future, right?
Correct.
We can put things out and say, it's up to you to put this app on, up to you to put the 80. If you ask me, it's the question of, would you have done it? My answer is yes, every time. Why? Because 3 days ago, my water line broke, fictitious, right?
Mhm.
But if you asked me 3 days later after it broke, I'd say, of course I would have put it on if you would have told me about it.
Yeah, that's always an option because it's out there now.
No,
But
Yeah, in that situation, they would have saved money.
and I would have said yes.
Yes, in the situation.
Now, would
Yes.
I have 4 days ago? I don't know, but after the fact, of course I would have.
Yeah.
So,
Just looking at the point of can we replace something that was already there for free? That's why this one was kind of put on hold for a minute. I will return to this one, just because of the cost. We did work with Clara, who came out with the new platform. We did work with them on a possible replacement. Getting a hold of them and getting something built through their pretty much a canned system for scripting. We were able to get a report that if you averaged more than 50 gallons per hour for continuously for 24 hours, you would pop up on the report. This was all great and dandy until we found some errors. It's not totally reliable because not all of our meters read the same. So if you have an older meter, your meter does not send us readings on the hour. It sends it maybe twice a day, maybe once a day, and maybe intermittently, which would be maybe every other day we get a reading from you. The script was only picking up those that were reading hourly. So we were kind of throwing some numbers out before the meeting and downstairs, and we were figuring at least approximately, we could comfortably say 60% of our customers then didn't exist to that script because they don't read hourly.
60?
60.
Okay.
It's just as meters get replaced, they do get onto the newer software that reads hourly. So right there, that tells us this is not a viable solution that we should probably stick with. Another option that was thrown out and we kind of laughed, but made little sense was how about we just stop doing it? So we tasked a few staff members to go out and do a survey of Pella, Grimes, Urbandale, Perry, Johnson, Ankeny, and Waukee. Mixed results. A lot of their support in this is reactive. We're in the same boat. It'd be reactive. A couple of them do have a different software that can do the over 50 gallons an hour for a 24-hour period. You'll get an email. None of the cities surveyed advertise this as a service, just because you can have a glitch in the system. And does that put some liability back on us for not notifying you that your water line broke and now you just put 3,000 gallons out onto your floor? We discussed that at length as well, but we were kindly encouraged to not use that one and keep moving. So the next one was, how about we move to transition to smart meters throughout the city? It comes with a lot of bonuses. It does, but it also comes with a really nice price tag. Some of the bonuses would be, if we were trying to conserve water, we could actually put in a restriction. Once you hit a certain number of gallons, you're going to be shut down.
Regardless if you're legitimately using it or not?
It's one of those things where you can move it. But if you're actually serious about water conservation, this is one thing that is used quite widely.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah. Thankful we're not.
Mr.
Thankful
Weaver
we're not.
probably would be with his new
Big
tracking
Brother.
devices and
I
such,
love
but
Big Brother.
That's just one feature.
That is one feature. Some of the other positives are, if, say, we do need to shut down quickly a good section of a run of line, we can do that. And we can get the repair fix and get everybody back up. If someone doesn't pay, we actually had somebody strategically park over their shutoff valve. Couldn't shut them off. Well, guess what? Now we can. You know, those are some of those fun ones that the utility billing specialists they were just like smiling from ear to ear, which I understand their point, and I understand where Jeff's staff, instead of being called out after hours and we're paying overtime to go turn somebody back on because they finally paid their water bill, we could do it from a laptop. Like I said, it comes with a very hefty price, and so we kind of left that one just to sit there as well. And the last one we came up with is educate, and we do that on the daily basis. Even in the last few Clive connections, we put out a couple DIYs, do it yourself. Yeah. And some of it was to check if you had a faulty toilet, see if you had a faulty faucet. If you shut off everything in your house, the meter should stop moving. Just some of those simple maintenance things that we, as homeowners, we often overlook, but we educate nonstop. you remind everybody, especially this last year with the tiered irrigation system, we got a few phone calls and we're like, well, you know, how much water do you think you need? And we kind of walked it through it, and some residents then understood why it's important to not overwater your lawn. So we always educate. Through all this, our recommendation from multiple meetings was that we'll always continue to work with Eclair, and hopefully their technology works a little better with us, and we can come up with something that'll work for us. We do have one extra negative for us is we do a deduct system off our irrigation meters. Most systems aren't equipped to do that. So we're one of the rare. But we'll always continue to work with Clara. We did say that the self system to put on your post meter. We encourage customers, if they choose to do that, we're not going to tell them no. But we do want to let them know that it's our meter read that is what's going to show up on your bill. We just don't want the phone calls and the arguments over discrepancies of what this box reported versus our MTUs. And then, of course, the smart meters. That one is going to be a discussion for a later date, but that is something that could be viable for the city of Clive. Not saying we should rush into it, but it's something that you, the council, Matt, Pete, and Jeff, and other staff members should have a lengthy conversation over before that should, you know, be the last resort. We're going to jump into it. So that's where the update kind of ends. We were able to get all the residents who are still customers of ours that had signed up for the original service, which equated to about 7% of the total accounts in the city of Clive. We will be reaching out to let them know that that service is no longer available, as we still strive to find a replacement for high consumption leak detection reporting.
How long has that program not been operational?
We know permanently since we went to the Aclara One platform.
Which is how
We
long?
know that that's 2020. Yeah, it's at least 2 years, 2.5, 3 years. So. And we've had few instances, but it's still that one customer, I mean, was, you know,
What exposed it in terms of it not working.
And
Correct.
so what
That
did
was
we
last
do
year.
with that
Mhm.
one customer? How did we take care of our obligation with that one customer?
This one got elevated quickly to myself, Liz, Matt. It was one where we went back, we reviewed it.
And the mayor.
And the mayor, yes, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
You know which one I'm talking about.
In color.
Took care of it. We were reasonable.
We were very reasonable. We worked with the owner. We did
That's a
a
bad
payment plan and
A payment plan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but ultimately they have to pay.
No,
Right,
it wasn't
just
just
over
that.
time.
We also discounted.
we discounted some of the.
Well, my
some of the fee.
argument, Ted, is that if we gave you a sense of security that we would watch it, and in 2 years, we've never notified that 7% of folks, they aren't being watched, they don't have insurance, that's a failure on our part, right? And
I would agree. And this is why we want to make that right in terms of sending the mailing out, and also in that mailing, educating them on options that are out there in terms of things that we can start to try to do with our reporting. Again, it isn't going to be a guarantee without a major investment for a new system, but we dropped the ball on this one when it was brought to our light, and we wanted to make sure we came back to you at least with some realistic options before we communicated with that 7% of
But,
customers.
So
So
Mike's
some-
earlier, oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, Sir Count. So to summarize, what I think I'm hearing is you're saying we're ending the program. We're just going to educate folks and then monitor on our own kind of in the background, and then maybe have a long-term goal of smart meters. Is that basically the summary?
Yeah, and I would say with that monitoring is also notifying when something
When
hits the
we
system.
think that there's something that's.
Like if we see something, and again, it's going to be part of our, as we convert over older meters onto the hourly system, that'll, we can only write really one or two scripts for this system. We're trying to figure out if we could do an additional script for those non-hourly meters that would peak an alert. It doesn't sound like we can do that quite yet, but that's something we want to work on. But at least for the hourly meters, the utility billing staff, when they run their daily reports, could, if it's something over like that 50 gallons per hour, we'll see something.
And we did
Again, it's
catch,
not a perfect system,
Right.
right? But it's something at least better than nothing.
we did catch two residentials come up on the list. We made those phone calls. Both of them, I'm not going to give too many details because the one gentleman was quite humorous in it, but they had already noticed that they had running water. One was a toilet, one was a faucet. They had already made the appropriate phone calls to get those rectified.
Well, and to Mike's earlier point, you know, I don't see much, if any, of a downside towards telling telling residents, you know, hey, there's these options out there, right? And maybe we just say, here are 4 examples, you can get your own, but then, you know, realistically, we're not endorsing any particular product, but at least we're maybe having them look at products that aren't like that app that you mentioned. I've had a water monitor on my house for years now. And they work pretty reliably. I've had mine for half a decade at least, and I'm just having to change the batteries for the first time actually last month.
Can I ask a question? Is it somewhat close to what your water bill is being billed at?
Yeah,
For gallons?
it's usually within 10 to 15 gallons.
Or remind me again why we switched from a Claire Star to Claire One.
That
The
was
software,
that was their platform enhancement, so we went along with the enhancement.
I'm just surprised with their enhancement, they still wouldn't offer that service.
It really wasn't them offering the service. It was a desire of ours because Des Moines Waterworks uses the same software, and one of their employees was willing to write the script for us.
It was a third-party app. It wasn't
I see.
developed by Aclara.
Correct.
Okay.
But when all those links were broken by us moving from stars to one, it basically, yeah, it ended that.
The API broke.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we didn't have this in place, and I remember pushing hard for us to get this in place. And I do think it was very effective for a long time. I was signed up for it, and it actually notified me one time because I had a running toilet and I didn't know. So it was very effective. And I regret the fact that it's not functional now and that we're going to have to discontinue it, because I think what's going to happen is what used to happen when we would get those calls and emails and people being really angry at, they normally have an $80 bill and now they've got a $400 bill. And some of those folks, they can't afford it. So we're going to see that again now as a result.
This came up 2 days ago because my neighbor has moved due to some age issues unexpectedly. And that 2 weeks of winter hit right after she left. She had a $6,000 bill.
Right.
That to me is a bit absurd that we don't catch. I mean, I can't imagine our system wouldn't just be lighting up and computers would be breaking over a $6,000 bill.
Her meter doesn't read on the hourly.
Well, does it read on a day?
Well,
Because
no,
ran
it
for
did. We,
days.
soon as we did pull in reads and calculated, Stephanie made that phone call immediately. And that's how we found out why she wasn't in the home, while she was in a different residence for that time. And Stephanie had at least 3 phone calls with her. And we actually, through our discretion, while she was checking through her homeowner insurance, we've suspended all late fees and everything. We're working with her because if she is able to be reimbursed, that's our whole thing
She's
is.
not angry.
No.
She didn't even ask me to.
Sweet lady,
to
I
look
talked to
into
her.
it,
So.
And I thought, this.
I mean, at the end of the day, they use the water, right? And so there's a cost to that they ultimately have to pay back. That's why this system was so nice to have in place. And so for us to lose that is really disappointing. I do wish there was maybe some level of threshold that we could put in for any type of meter that says if you're over 100% of your normal usage, whatever that number is, right?
On a
Some level,
24-hour script. It doesn't have to be an hourly.
yeah,
script.
but I mean, I don't know.
We could do a 24-hour script and do the calculation to see if they exceed a certain number of gallons. We can try that as well. And I don't want you to think I don't have a bleeding heart, because when I first started here, we took a phone call and, the residents were on vacation and they filled their basement up multiple times where it would have emptied the water tower twice.
Oh, God.
And I just remember, the city manager at the time, Denny, was like, we're not forgiving any of it. And I mean, my jaw dropped, because I came from a community where you got a one-time forgiveness. And I'm like, what? And he goes, nope, we don't do that. The water was used. And that's been our practice all the way through. We are very accommodating to our residents. We do make phone calls. We do our best we can. We do not, I mean, even the two ladies who do the majority of the phone calling, they feel guilty. They get off the phone. They're like, I had to tell them this. And I'm like, okay, you did right. You followed our procedures. So we'll take it from there.
Yeah, this isn't about you or,
I know,
you
I
know,
know.
what happened, but it's just unfortunate that, I mean, yes, they use the water. Now, I can make the argument, and Matt's right, and you'd be right, Ted, too, is that the water did, in this case, go down the sewer. To me, it's insane we're charging for the water and the sewer. It's not even a rounding error on the sewer side, right? And so to reduce it something like in 50%, and she's not arguing, I'm not, it's just, that doesn't seem right to me, right? I mean, the sewer piece is nothing compared to the overall. The water, yes, it's real, and sewer's real too, but not in the big picture. And when we know it went down and not used.
Right.
And we have a broken system of looking at this, and how long did we catch it? And I'll draw Pete's bleeding heart for water is that we should have a system, right? If we're really looking for water conservation, to allow $6,000
Yeah, that's crazy.
without us catching it is crazy. And then to charge sewer, I'm not okay with that.
Corey, it's kind of a no-win situation right
It
here. And
is.
I appreciate you bringing to our attention and really researching this and putting a task force together in the city to come up with, plausible alternatives on this and what can we do about this. I'd throw it back to Claire a little bit and put some pressure on them and say, look, this is a service that every community needs, right?
Mhm.
Why haven't you come up with something? You guys are running the software. I'd push back on them and say, work with us on this. You've got, you've come up with this system. This isn't that complicated. I mean, there's code out there that you could incorporate into this in order to have a script that addresses this. Let's push back on Claire to have them come up with a solution for us.
If Pete worked with his Indian Hills group, they'd probably have it written within
Yeah.
a month.
And I think playing around with the scripts is something that I think we want to look at too, in terms
Yeah.
of how do we capture all 100% of our meters, like a
Yeah.
24-hour script versus an hourly script is, I think if this is the situation we're in right now, we need to play around with it a little bit more to see how we capture more meters.
Because we're gonna see it. We're
gonna
gonna
see it,
I
guys.
mean,
It
it
is.
happens.
And in all fairness, when we were discussing it downstairs, especially on your neighbor's situation, though the previous system did work for a number of residents, it also had its faults. And
It wasn't perfect.
it wasn't perfect. We would get 800 emails and a majority of them were normal usage, because we got copied in on every email that went out to the residents. So we actually have another folder that just populates, and some of them were well within the reason. So
Jeff?
Aclara was not a by choice thing. They just continued the previous version. We had to go up to it. With it came multiple different difficulties, not only this, but data would only go back 2 years. We used to be able to store all our data. So now we only have 2 years worth of data to look at history, which Aclara discontinued for everyone. And some cities are looking at going away from Aclara, looking for other choices. That's a big expense to go completely away and start over. Similar to what smart meters would be. Smart meters probably are the way of the future. They provide a lot of benefits. I have a friend just a few months ago, gave me a call, needed help. His mom had moved to a nursing home. Her pipes had froze and the water department just gave him a call. He was in Colorado, asking me if I could run down and help him out because his water department did notice that it was there, and I went and they had it shut off by the time I was there, but we were able to clean it up. Smart meters provide a lot of benefits. It's a huge investment. It's something we probably need to talk about more as we move forward. It's not going to be a quick, let's do it now, but it's certainly something I think we need to look at the benefits and advantages that it can provide and kind of weigh that out.
Can you phase them in?
Yeah.
Could we say, okay, anything new today would be a smart meter? Or
Yes,
any
yeah,
new
yeah, and again,
construction?
we're not, we need to look into that and we're starting to ask those questions. Depending on what type of meter, what system, you know, we might have to run two systems as we're doing it type of thing, but yes, you know, as we start changing the meters out.
And then you can only check this on those new ones that go in, whereas all the old ones, so you can't, right? So you're gonna be in this kind of
But you still-
gray area.
Even if we decide to go change out
Yeah.
all 8,000 meters, it's gonna take us a long time.
Right.
You know, it's not something we can do in 1 year type of thing. So it's a big investment and it's something we would be
Yeah,
interested in
big
doing and
project.
considering.
And one thing I want to, for the council's perspective too, in terms of bigger policy conversations, we've talked around this table about a more formal water conservation plan in the sense of now we're part of Central Iowa Waterworks. We're now starting to work our way out of a drought condition, but we've been in a drought condition for 4 years. You know, smart meters also provide a lot of additional data, not just the, you know, the shut off piece, but also a lot of additional data that could help really drive when we have those peaking days to understand what kind of peaking are we seeing. That could also be the concept of smart meters could be a component of an overall water conservation plan where we're, you know, we've started down that road a little bit with tiered irrigation. That's kind of a part of that. A piece that we're trying to now we'll start to finalize over the next year to 18 months to 2 years is, okay, what is it going to look like under the new Central Iowa Waterworks framework for surcharge expenses? You know, we're a peaking community. What's that going to look like? Is investments in smart meters, for example, a more cost-effective return on investment versus more storage infrastructure or another aquifer storage and recovery system that we're storing water? Maybe a smart meter system is the more cost-effective measure where when we're at a high peaking level and we're starting to go against maybe our limit or our purchase capacity number, if you will, you know, is there a policy around how you utilize the smart meters to reduce that peaking, you know, maybe voluntarily or involuntarily across the city? I mean, these are all big policy conversations, but I think smart meters are a tool that could be part of a bigger water conservation policy discussion.
Especially on the
Magnitude
irrigation
of
side.
the cost of a smart. meter.
What's the cost of 1 meter?
You know, talking about that, I'm gonna guess it's probably in that $400 to $500 a meter type cost.
Times 8,000
Plus all the installation.
Yeah, plus the install.
and the
Time.
installation.
So somebody, you know, I'm gonna get those numbers. I can get them back to you. I'll let Matt know.
And realistically, they still have a battery lifetime.
Yeah, and they got a battery lifetime. You'll have to
So
change
they're
it
just
out.
like the MTUs in terms of we have
Yes,
have
yes.
to do replacements of them every so often.
Yeah, so, you know, what I've heard from the council is that you want us to prioritize customer service still. And given the challenges we have with our infrastructure, to deliver on that commitment to customer service, we're gonna have to take a hybrid approach. We may not be able to write a script that captures everybody, but we'll be able to write scripts that capture many. What I also heard from Corey and with this research is that a lot of other cities are in the exact same boat. And so they get a little bit careful about how much they promise because we're not going to be able to account for every unknown. And we are going to have to operate in this hybrid system. That's why when our clerks right now are looking through the billings, when they come in, they get right on it when they see a bad number or a surprising number. They've got the eyes to see that. And so I want to make sure that Corey and his team get that credit and all that. Say nobody was just sitting back waiting for the tool to do what we thought it was going to do. They are proactively working through that data so that they keep that commitment to customer service, and that's going to remain consistent. I'm very encouraged by what Councilman Michelanini mentioned about the accuracy of that tool. I think it's reasonable that we were concerned about that because we don't want to get into the he said, she said types of debates with customers. If we can avoid it, the number is still the number that's going to go out on the bill. But if we can present to the customers that there are these choices that they can make, that they'll get them something that signals that there maybe is a problem. Not going to tell them the exact volume of water, but it signals that there might be a problem. That's definitely something we can include in a letter when we do this communication. And absolutely, we'll tell people we are committed to still getting this better in the future as our tools allow and our partners empower us to do that. So I don't want anybody It's like that commitment to customer service, because I see it every day with our staff down there working through those numbers and trying to get in touch with people.
And this could be potentially win-win because like, and I'm not saying everybody goes out and buys the same solution I have, but a lot of these solutions, they offer their own leak guarantee, like anti-leak detection guarantee, right? If you have a leak with their product properly installed, they'll pay you X number of dollars.
Hmm.
So
Councilman? What brand do you have? Do you know?
it's Flume.
I know Moen just came out with a new one that's down to by the drop detection. It's about
Yeah,
$500 for a 3/4 inch meter. Will automatically shut the system down. You can preset it to where it'll shut down if you overuse it. I hope you're not in the shower when you hit that number, but you know, there's some really new stuff out there that's really coming out. That's
Well, and that's actually, so my, the system I have, we bought ours before Moen came out, but anyway, we have it tied into our main valves, right? So if it detects a leak, it will shut off the valve. So unless that leak is prior to the main valve, meaning it's coming from the inlet line, basically right before, or right after the meter, it's going to catch that leak and stop it.
Yep.
Anything else? I think you have direction.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
Next item is the strategic plan update. I've been asked if we need to take a break or will this be quick?
This will be depending on council questions, Your Honor. Included in the packet is our quarterly update with all the action items related to your strategic planning, top and high priorities. Just noting a few in terms of work that's been happening around our 86th Street activation plan in terms of meetings and discussions with the West Des Moines School District and additional meetings coming up about further collaborations within the neighborhood. They have a significant desire to collaborate with the city, particularly on communications with the neighborhood. So I think there's some synergies coming together there and maybe looking at some joint events later this summer. We'll have more information on that coming up, and also with the dominant property owner with Glacier Properties and relations to Lenan and other potential projects that are in the kind of the queue for the neighborhood that would impact where he could collaborate with us in terms of those projects, and particularly on property, is something that we're having a lot of discussions on. Greenbelt Landing is nearing its completion of construction drawings, and we're looking hopefully later in May to set a public hearing for bidding. We're just waiting on permit from the DNR. That is a theme with a couple of our projects right now in terms of waiting on permits from the DNR on the stream restoration portions. Also wanted to mention that we had our Doug held the University Avenue Boulevard flood mitigation meeting last night. We had some attendance from folks representing the Wittern property and had some good conversations with them. Doug isn't here tonight because he's over at P&Z at Public Safety Building, and that'll be an item that'll come back items that'll come back to you at the next meeting in May related to what Public Plan and Zoning is discussing tonight. But on that, I just wanted to feature those items, and of course the Hickman interchange. There's been a lot of work happening this week. Credit to Public Works, Pete, and some others in terms of getting Congressman Nunn's office a number of documents and information related to our community project request for the interchange. And then that'll be a discussion point for a couple council members and Pete at DC next week. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's questions on any of the items.
Any questions? Hearing none. Pete, report.
Looking forward to the DC trip. The work that Matt just mentioned was also very much made possible because of Congressman Nunn's staff. So we will make a point of thanking them especially for moving this good communication along to the Appropriations Committee.
Very good. Pre-con.
No report tonight.
Ted.
Attended Greater Des Moines Community Foundation luncheon today with the mayor and Matt and Pete, along with some board members from the Clive Community Foundation as well. So Clive was well represented there, and needless to say, the Greater Des Moines Community Foundation is doing a lot of great work with nonprofits and raising money for the region.
Thanks, Ted. Eric.
No report, Your Honor.
Susan.
This is just a brief aside, but I went to the Iowa Commercial Real Estate Association meeting this morning, happened to sit next to someone from Septagon, and they're the company that is working on the distillery project for 86th Street. He mentioned a lot of issues with stormwater that they're needing to work through. So I don't know what those are, but I'm hopeful that that can get worked out because he said that's some of a potential delay, but hopefully by the fall, they'll get something figured out. So I don't know any more about it than that, but I think it's something we're all really excited about, given the location. And he did assure me that the billboard will be coming out.
What I'm aware of related to that is kind of some of the things we run into when something's in the floodplain is how do you store stormwater, normal rain management when it's in a floodplain? And so how do you do that in compliance with our post-construction stormwater ordinance when if the creek is up and it's flooded around it? And where does the stormwater go? I know that I've heard some conversation at staff level about how do we balance those two things between our compliance of our post-construction and then the floodplain management. So that might be what they're referring to.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Anything
That's
else,
it.
Susan?
Thanks.
Michael? Have nothing. Legal counsel.
No report, Your Honor.
The only item I have, Your Honor, is just to follow up on one of the resolutions that was included in the consent agenda. The mayor and I attended a meeting of the Dallas County Mayor Managers earlier this week to continue the conversation on having a discussion with the Dallas County Board of Supervisors with the substantial growth in the county of looking at a potential expansion of that Board of Supervisors from 3 to 5. Warren County recently did this in 2022. They're about half the size and population that Dallas County is right now. And their Board of Supervisors put it on the ballot proactively at their action, and it was voted and approved. And it was good to see a number of Dallas County mayors and managers together and kind of in lockstep on proposing that to the Board of Supervisors, and that will occur here later in May. And then we'll report back to the council on whether the Board of Supervisors makes that choice. Otherwise, it would require a petition to do so to put that on the ballot. Of course, this is a presidential election year, so typically a larger turnout for that election. And so it seems to make good sense. Again, with the growth in the county, the timing seems to make a lot of sense to look at that. Other than Lynn County, which had made a choice to go from 5 to 3 here a few years ago, Dallas County would be the largest that isn't at 5 in the state of Iowa right now. So anyway, just wanted to follow up on that. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
All right. Any other questions, any correspondence, Matthew? Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we'll adjourn at 7:57.